Your life now, Joanna.
Thank you very much. I'm going to call to order the November 18th, 2021 Building Virginia Transportation Authority Governance and Personnel Committee. In attendance right now with me is Chair Wheeler from Prince William County and myself, which means we don't yet have a quorum. Well, now we have a quorum. Board Member Crystal has just walked in the room. I know. We'll let her take a seat. Hi, how are you doing? All right, so since Board Member Crystal is here, we do have a quorum, and there's only 2 action items before what I think will be a really important discussion on the legislative program. And so I will go on and ask the board members, authority members, if you have reviewed the minutes from the July 8th meeting, which have been deferred. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes? Second. We'll move by Chair Wheeler and seconded by Board Member Crystal. Discussion on that. Hearing none, we will pass that. I'm sorry, hearing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that will pass 302 with Chairman McKay and Mayor David Younger not in attendance. And now we have the approval of the minutes from the October 14th meeting. If you have reviewed those minutes, can I get a motion for approval of those?
Move approval, Madam Chair.
Approval.
I didn't attend, so I don't think okay, I will second.
Okay, it's been seconds. Discussion on those. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Then that would be a 2-2-1 vote, which the tie vote.
You can vote for it, take it on their word, even though you weren't there.
Okay.
For administrative purposes.
Only if you trust us.
So I will say aye.
Okay, that gives me 0-2 vote then, and those will pass. And now we have the discussion of the legislative program, which after we haven't seen you all since Tuesday the 2nd. So the legislative program discussion may have a different tilt. So we'll go through it. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Taylor.
Thank you. I first want to thank Board Member Crystal for
Welcome
noting
to
that
the time.
I am getting very multimodal, and I keep calling the transient occupancy tax the transit occupancy tax.
Which makes me laugh because I think the transit occupancy tax we just call bus fare.
Exactly. So there's some technical fixes we're going to make in the final, but the program before you, I think as you all have mentioned before, our priorities don't change. What may change is how we approach them. So our priorities we wanted to make sure is, as always, protect our funding, restore, of course, our funding, and a new position that I know most of us are discussing and have in our programs, which is, making it clear that what was done in that the state's primary responsibility is funding transportation. They must have the money to do that. What was done in 2020 was an appropriate act. The Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission, JLARC, their report was due and reported 2 weeks ago, and they said, yes, the state needed to take action to restore sustainability of the Transportation Trust Fund. The action that General Assembly and all of us supported in 2020 was absolutely appropriate. So, JLARC said this. It's in the report. I have the slide and the report. So some great message points that we should all use if we have to talk about this. But I do think it's important to put a flag in the ground and say state transportation, that is their primary responsibility. They need the money to take care of it, and reducing that doesn't make a lot of sense when we know there's never enough money for all the multimodal needs across the Commonwealth, not just here in Northern Virginia, but everywhere. Planes, trains, automobiles, ports, space at this point. So that's a new position, and it's very, I've tied it to economic development, which is very important to everyone, and we're going to go with that. And then, of course, the other new one, if I can spell the word effective, is we've inserted our transportation technology strategic plan into our overall program, and we'll be looking for, again, we know for sure there's going to be EV and EV charging infrastructure discussion, probably even more so now that the federal infrastructure bill has passed. Whether we get any specific recommendations from the outgoing administration that are going to be considered by the General Assembly and the new administration, we don't yet know, but I'm hoping, and I think there will be. And of course, there's the additional flexibility. The FOIA Council did move forward with the consensus report I reported on last month. Doesn't have quite as much, but I think there's going to be ongoing discussion once the bill is dropped. There were some statements or some requests made for some additional of that. So I do think there will be some opportunity to continue to work on that bill, and they need to provide some of the additional flexibility that you all had some interest in.
So you want to kind of answer questions right now?
Yeah,
Any other questions yet?
I guess the only question I had, just with the characterization you were giving us about the new position, which certainly I support either way, but you were describing how the JLAC study talked about that act is appropriate. Is there not only not just political pushback that they would like to, or et cetera, but were there claims being made that that way somehow include even action?
No, I think where because JLAC was asked to look at the state of Virginia transportation funding and infrastructure,
Okay.
and their finding is that vehicle miles traveled were going up, and the primary revenue source of transportation is fuel tax.
Mm-hmm.
So we were approaching vehicle mile traveled numbers are going up, which used to mean more fuel tax. It doesn't anymore. The revenue from the fuel tax was going down. They hadn't quite crossed, but it was clearly that was what's coming. And this document served on Secretary Valentine's task force, which had looked at that, which fed into the 2020 omnibus bill.
Yeah.
So they said it's very clear that without these tax increases, there was a question about the sustainability of the transportation revenue sources to keep up with demand of what was needed in a multimodal system. So
It's just reaffirming.
absolutely, thank you. They were absolutely reaffirmed the action that was taken in 2020 that you could see where it's like, we could see the crossover without that happening.
Right.
And again, remember, first use of transportation money is maintenance, and then you get to capital. And so every time revenues go down, you're having to make up both of those, but first is maintenance, which means that capital gets smaller, smaller. And there were some other specific recommendations that they made that I think are of interest, particularly for us in Northern Virginia. For example, JLARC noted that the merit system, which is how they now distribute both transit capital and transit operating funds, and they made the observation that, yeah, it stands for something, yes, it's something. It's driven by formula, and we're going through working through it, but they noted that because ridership hasn't come back yet, that transit systems are still going to be struggling with operation funding for some period of time. And they made a specific recommendation that there's about $30-something million in surplus FY21 revenue, transportation revenue, that they recommend DRP to use through merit to keep the transit systems with enough operating funds. They talked about, interesting, the idea of identifying regional corridors of significance. Right now, the long-range plan in the state has what's called statewide corridors of significance, 95, 64, et cetera. They noted that actually in some parts of the Commonwealth, particularly the rural area, it's the regional roads that are more important than those interstates. And that it might make sense for CTV to look at identifying regional corridors of significance. So Secretary Valentine was there, and
Wouldn't any regional corridor of significance also be a statewide? And I can see a statewide corridor of significance not being a regional corridor of significance. but I can't see a regional corridor of significance not also being a statewide corridor of significance.
I think sometimes that can happen depending on how traffic and works in a particular region. You could have, for example, 220 or 15 be way more important and more critical to a region than a state, than an interstate.
I guess now that you say 15, I can definitely see that.
So,
Yeah.
no, 7.
Yeah, okay.
So,
7 is important here, but people in Colorado should hear about 7.
And so Secretary Valentine was there and was very happy with the report and said, we are absolutely going to take under advisement some of the recommendations that were talked about. And so I suspect at the last CTV meeting of the year, which is December 7th and 8th, right, there'll be some additional discussion about those recommendations. Now, again, I think as always, as these are implemented, we need to watch them and make sure they don't disadvantage us as a region in any way. But the most important part, go back to what Board Member Crystal said, is it reaffirmed the tax increase. And as we've won about it, it reaffirmed the 10-cent tax increase in the fuel tax.
They do. You didn't blow by, but you did kind of go quickly by numbers 1 and 2 on our program. And what you said is true, but I'd like to have a little more meat on this bone. What you said is we don't change our priorities, we just kind of present them and look at them differently. Tell me how we do that, present them differently. We don't look at them differently, but is there something we need to present differently to ensure that our first 2 priorities are heard?
Well,
Because truthfully, I gotta be honest. If we can just do the next 4 years, keep the status quo, I think I would consider that a win. I mean, let's just face it, to be honest. My bigger issue is that we don't lose anything. And so when we say we'll keep the positions because those are our permanent positions, we just present them differently. What does that mean?
we will, and again, we do this every 4 years because we get a new administration every 4 years. We will have to educate the new decision maker.
But we don't get a new philosophy, a new ideology every 4 years.
No, for us, we don't know.
But we do, but no.
I see what you're saying.
We don't get a new position every 4 years. We have a new ideology right now that I think it becomes a different issue, right?
Well, again, I think we can always, and we always have, talked about transportation. The region and this organization and all of your localities talk about transportation as a critical infrastructure that is important for quality of life, is important for the economy. It is, and I think those, particularly the economy part, is what we're going to
Okay,
emphasize.
so let me be more blunt, because we really have to have this conversation. All right, so all congratulations to the governor-elect and his administration coming in. The administration that's coming in and part of their platform was cut every tax, right? Cut, especially the grocery store tax, without any discussion of where revenue then will come from. And you have the NVTA that has already been ripe for the picking before for revenue, right? We have no replacement revenues for revenues that might come out. So simply saying that obviously transportation revenues is important to all of us is not enough. We have to have I need a plan on how we're going to protect this revenue that we have and not lose anything in an atmosphere where taxes will be cut and no new revenue will be generated. Does that make sense?
It does. Again, he has to propose, the General Assembly has to agree. We have 2 bodies. We have, again, well, I'm going to say this. These are taxes that already exist. We're not asking for a tax increase. There is no reason for them to come after regional money. We've got an 81 corridor that has projects that are being bonded as we speak, dependent on that revenue. Is he going to do that? We have Central Virginia, we have us, and we have Hampton Roads. which just elected a few new Republicans. From a transportation perspective, he has focused on the statewide gas tax increase. He has not specifically talked about the regional authorities. We are going to have to get in front of all 17 new members of the General Assembly and the existing ones who know us already and reaffirm for them and get rebuy-in from them that the regional authorities are doing really good work, that they know that is needed, and keep the money. Again, he can propose.
I guess, Ms. Baker, with due respect, the reason I sound a little panicked is because I was ringing this bell very loudly before we had our money taken the first time. And that was with a Democratic governor.
Could I suggest maybe
Hold
one?
on. I mean, but I was talking about this. I have been talking about this for a year. I saw every pun intended, that train coming down the track was going to roll over us, and then it did. And I felt like we were saying exactly what I'm hearing now. And although we saw it coming and it was clear that was going to happen, we did not get in front of it. And so when I hear the same words now that I heard before, I'm a little more nervous that, listen, I can't hear about educating people and importance of regional. We did this once, and we had our money taken. So I'm actually saying, do we have another strategy this time? Because I am not feeling confident. Not to mention, we're going to lose people on this body, and they're going to be replaced by other people on this body who have different relationships in the General Assembly than our two delegates who are on this body right now have. We're going to lose them. So I think taking money the first time weakened us. And I am a little bit worried. And I don't, and the answers that we tried to put in place before just don't feel significant enough to me. And I'm telling you, I would do whatever Tracy, you tell me to do, and I would be, you give me marching orders and I will march. But.
So can I ask a quick question? I think one of the dynamics that is different in 2018 versus now is there was a regional fund, regionally raised money, reprogrammed to what the state frustratingly saw as a region, which is Nevada. What I am trying to get a sense of what could be different now is I think what you're suggesting is could the new governor and a Republican majority in the House see regional money as a way to plug statewide holes that are introduced by cutting other revenue sources? Is that right? That's
a big concern. That's one of them. Yes.
Is there, first, I guess the question would be one maybe for our councils, but are there any requirements around regional taxes and taxes, which is to say collected only within the catchment area of the authority, being spent within the authority?
We had that discussion last time. We did, and I think I don't remember.
Well, because we talked about this within context of what we spent money, right? Like there's been some concern, for example, about could authority money be spent on traction power upgrades, which serve the whole Vermont system that's outside. So I think there may be some legal there that these regional revenues cannot actually go to plug holes in the statement.
Well, I'm just going to remind you, it depends on whether we actually still control the revenue source.
I see. So they could say, we're going to basically do what they did in 2018, repeal the revenue source.
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, that is how that would happen.
Yeah. In that case, I mean, I think we are sort of in the same boat as every other priority. We hold as a region, right? Which is what happens if they.
But there's a coalition to be built of the three standing regional authorities. One of them, which is heavily leveraged in debt on its revenues, plus the business community. I mean, the state chamber is about to deliver an economic blueprint to the governor-elect that speaks very strongly about transportation infrastructure. There is a, let's call it what it is, an industry that does the work for the state and localities that needs this money to be flowing to have jobs. and to make revenue.
Did they not speak up last time that?
For us, no.
They didn't.
Well, I think the problem was last time is that it was regional transportation money going to another regional transportation.
It was a Northern Virginia issue. It wasn't a statewide
That's
issue.
right, which is
Different this
also,
time.
no, it's not different, because it's the argument that I was screaming last time, which is if Metro is important to Northern Virginia and Northern Virginia jobs are important to the state, then Metro is important to the state.
At some point, they'll actually realize that, but that's
Yeah,
not
I mean,
happening.
I do, and one of the distinctions as well is that we don't have Northern Virginian members of the House of Delegates trying to repeal this tax, right?
But that's
Helps a little bit.
Or even a member of NVTA themselves, although.
I-
maybe Secretary of Transportation.
All my hope is about it. I do wonder, I do wonder, to what extent, I think it's in code that NVTA's members from the General Assembly have to come from NVTA jurisdiction.
Correct.
And
That is
so,
correct.
No, but didn't they then change it?
They have that budget
But
language.
the
that's
Democrats
right.
took it out of the budget.
Yeah,
Okay, but because-
but they only struck the part that they had to be a delegate. The other language regarding being, having residents in the region was
It's
still there.
Okay, so, okay then.
so there are, I think, I'm not as quite as familiar with like the entirety of the boundaries and explaining, but I think there is only,
It's planning district 8 is how it's defined.
are there any delegates from planning district?
Yes,
Mr. Ross, coming back.
yes.
And we will maintain at least one of our more
Well,
pro-transportation.
so.
But the individuals who proposed that language before are no longer there.
So, I mean, I don't know if there's any, but I do think there's been some dynamic, and correct me if this is wrong, I think there's some dynamic of sort of those folks in Northern Virginia don't even know what they want. We'll listen to the one or two members for a caucus from Northern Virginia. Well, now it's one member. And so I think that is maybe a little bit of a difference. between
And I
now
guess
and
the good thing is the one member. So Monica, say that again. So the one member can't come back because he's a delegate. Are you saying that the language now does not allow, you have to be a
You
delegate?
have to be a delegate because they removed that language that they have put in stating that speaker can appoint someone who isn't a delegate.
Is that a decision of the House only, or does that have to go?
No, that would be a budget. If it's in the budget, both bodies have to agree to it.
So that's the education we have to do also.
Oh,
Yeah.
there's no question. We've got to work on the Senate and make sure they look for certain things.
We'll see, but I hope that'll be one potential distinction.
Right.
That you're not gonna have Northern Virginians saying that this is something
Right.
that is good for the region, to take our money away, which is what you actually
Again,
had in
When
2018.
it is absolutely, especially one particular Northern Virginia
Right.
government and everything. I just want us to be, I just don't want us to walk over this, like, yes, I need us to be honest, to gear up for the fight if we need to do it.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, we absolutely need to gear up and be prepared. I'm actually hoping there'll be other things he wants to do in the tax arena that will leave transportation all alone, all of its own. I mean, there's a lot of decisions, but again, absent the weird fight that happened about us, by and large, transportation has a lot of bipartisan support and across the Commonwealth. Again, what was done in 2020 has benefited every part of the Commonwealth.
Yeah, it's just easy to go back to the same cookie jar that you've been to before.
It is, although as of yet, and again, this is a lot of amorphous, there's not a lot of details about really what he's going to focus on. He says a lot of things, but again, as you all know, once you get into the middle of the session, you do have to pick your priorities. You just can't do everything. So,
Okay, all right.
so
Because I do, if you think about the dynamics, for them to access our NVTA revenues to use for statewide authorities, they would have to repeal a tax, which they're gonna want to do in Northern Virginia, so that's impatient to be there. But then they have to reinstitute the tax for it to go to statewide priorities. And I mean, if your whole point is you're ideologically anti-tax, you're gonna create basically a new tax. I think the bigger problem is just that they shrink our revenue, not that they reprogram it. Because they'd have to
Also that.
recodify a new
Well,
tax.
but that is also why, that's also why I said if we come out of this and with
I
having lost
agree.
anything.
That I'm terrified about. I'm terrified about those statewide revenues. I
We
mean,
will be.
the governor just promised to cut the gas tax. That is like when.
And with 5 other tax proposals, again, you just may not have the ability to do all of them because the General Assembly would have to agree.
I totally agree with Bill, so we have to be ready, we just have to be ready.
Oh, no
We need
question.
to Just think 3 steps ahead.
It just, I mean, again, last time I was, and everyone was like, come down. And then I got a call one night. And I was like, oh,
Tomorrow morning. we're taking a vote.
pretty much. So,
I suggest maybe there's some conversations with folks in the business community. That's fine. Not that that'll prevent anything, but at least to keep, be ready.
it could help, it absolutely could help. It may actually prevent something.
And what's nice about it, the business committee up here, and again, as I said, the state chamber, they all have transportation revenue important PBIT as part of their agendas. And, there will be Jason Sanford, who you all know, will be convening the business coalition on transportation pretty early in December. And she's pretty clear, they're going to be clear about this is not the way to go about doing anything, that this money from 2020 needs to stay.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So we'll be walking the halls with them.
Yeah, we can go on a follow up.
And we certainly are going to arm our delegation with as much. Monica is going to have a NVTA 101 with our new delegates in December.
Who are?
We have about 9.
So we've got
I'm counting one,
2,
Michelle Reed.
3, 4.
Well, no, Michelle, because they don't have, yes, Michelle would be, okay, yeah.
Brianna, and also Elizabeth.
Yeah. And and then, and Brianna.
Of course, yeah. Okay. It was,
So it's Brianna,
Fran, not Fran,
Aldana, Irene Shin.
Shin, Irene Shin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, his new representatives are excellent.
Yeah, they're all.
Elizabeth Parker chaired the VRE this year.
Yeah.
Michelle Maldonado has been, has made transit a key point of her platform.
And I've met with, Maldonado.
Congratulations.
I know.
And it's like, yay, and oh my gosh.
And I had a chance to talk with all 4 of them also. Because again, it was great because they were already attuned, but they just need some details and talking points, which we'll get. And, I think we'll be putting together talking points for the entire delegation. Because again, you need to look for this, you need to look for this, you need to look for this. And our budget conferees in particular, as we know, they show up in the conference report we've never seen before. Like, don't do this. Don't allow the language that says just any citizen could be appointed as it's a General Assembly member. Make it a General Assembly member. There's only one. Yeah.
Real quick,
Sure.
did you say that there's one of the other regional authorities is more rural?
No, so we have Hampton Roads,
Okay.
which came into being the same time as we did,
Okay.
and then Central Virginia has one.
Isn't that new?
And then I-81, it's not really a authority, but it is a corridor that has dedicated revenue as we do. It's mostly
But
fuel.
does Central Virginia tend to be more?
Well, it's Richmond and Rico, Chesterfield, Goochland, so it's like us, it's a mix of
But
both.
there might be, there's some strength in numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, so between the 4 of those corridors, that's a lot of the general.
That's a lot of the population.
It's a lot of the
Yeah.
population.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Everybody's on the same message.
Mhm.
Right, Sharon? Everybody's on the same message. Make it
And Hampton Roads just got dedicated money for transit for goodness sake.
From where?
They got a new dedicated tax.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, that came out. I was going to. Look, everybody. Good for them. No, okay. All right, man, this back to you now.
So you're right, we will spend be spending most of our chit chatting,
Protecting.
and protecting and just been playing big defense. I mean, I agree. Until we understand that he's not going to do it, we have to assume that it's going to at least be proposed. We just have to get the General Assembly to say no. Because it makes no sense. That's all I really have in terms of what our focus is. Defend. We'll be playing in whatever we're going to do related to EVs. And again, the one unknown we have, and it's unlikely to be a General Assembly effort, is sort of what are some specifics coming from the bipartisan infrastructure bill. I mean, most of the money is distributed to the states by formula, which means it goes into our pots of money and distributed by formula. So there'll be more money for some things that we care about. We certainly want to see how much of it can be put into as many multimodal things that we like as possible. The piece that we're not going to get, and again, it won't be General Assembly piece, will be the competitive grant programs created at the federal level and how they mesh with what our priorities are and what the state wants to do. But again, one of the things we don't yet know is what will be the new administration's transportation philosophy and priorities. He didn't spend time talking about transportation on the campaign trail, actually, honest. So it's very much of a blank at this point. There are a number of big things that are in place and are moving along, like the passenger rail authority, the interstate corridor plans, certainly a very data-driven transit distribution of operating and capital funding, which on its face, all of those should, and the statewide prioritization plan smart scale, which JLARC also said, reaffirmed that that's the way to go. So all of these things that are sort of data-driven, metric-driven should resonate with the new governor's background. But again, I'm just gonna be blunt, we just don't know. Just don't know. They could just let the professionals do their job, and that might be the best thing that could happen for us. And not really change anything that has started at this point. At this point.
I guess if I could, the one thing, I mean, they said this incoming administration said very little on transportation, but there have been references to cutting the gas tax. And I assume that means a statewide gas tax or freezing the statewide gas tax.
He said he wants to suspend the increase for 12
And
months.
that's the 2020 reference.
That's the 2020
Okay,
reference.
so to our knowledge, we've not heard them talk about going further.
No,
What is the point at which, had action not been taken in 2020, we would hit that
Ooh.
nexus?
there wasn't.
They had a chart, and
They had a
I
chart, I
thought
can't
it was
remember
like
where it was.
2023 or 2025. Or something
Yeah, it was
like that.
within 5 years.
Yeah, it was.
So within the term of
Yes. Yeah, and the other thing, the other thing that we all have to, which they will have to be careful of, and we have to make sure we understand, is federal money requires a state match, by the way, even the formula money. Back in the day, it used to be 90-10.
That's a good point.
We're not 90-10 anymore.
What is it? What is it though?
Ooh, 85-15.
Program.
It's in the program, so it's 85-15, 80-20 is some.
RCP, but it depends on the program.
Yeah, but there is a state match that is required. So turning down that kind of money is not going to look good.
Yeah.
So again, session starts on the 12th, inauguration is on January 12th, inauguration January 15th. There will,
Say that again.
session starts January 12th. Yeah, I put a preliminary schedule in the packet. There's some additional dates that have to be confirmed. But again, so the next big things that are going to happen is Governor Northam present his proposed budget on December 16th. Legislators were permitted to start pre-filing bills Monday, November 15th.
Do they have, I asked this at our meeting, and I wasn't, I'm not sure what the answer was. Is there a bill limit?
My understanding is there will be a bill limit for both the House and the Senate, which is usually the bill limit is for bills you introduce after you officially convene. So bills that are introduced after January 12th, but those bill limits haven't been set by the caucuses yet.
Oh, okay. Are they meeting in person?
Yes,
Okay.
they are meeting in person. But they are still maintaining, well, I'm sure will. They're still going to maintain the ability to testify remotely. The pre-filing started Monday. Yeah, I do believe there will be bill limits because they wore out their staff. They needed to what for 2 years now. Last day, Sunny Die is March 12th. They'll be approving a plan budget, maybe some caboose for this budget. The new governor will submit budget amendments after he's inaugurated.
The only thing, isn't there 2 delegate races that are going
Yes.
to go to?
There are 2 recounts. Yes.
One is it a 94 vote difference?
One is 94 and one is 127. Yes.
Okay, and when will those recounts be completed?
I don't know when they'll be completed. That's a good question. I don't know if it'll take a week. I
think I just assumed it was but like 500 votes. That's crazy.
So, but they've officially filed to have the recount. I don't know that we know how long it's going to take.
All right, so you'll know when the recount happens?
It's happening. It'll happen pretty soon. I just don't know how long it will take. Shouldn't take very long. It's just
It's just putting things back to the machine.
I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't think it's just that because again, these have been canvassed at the local level. The state board has certified them, which is what had to happen before they could petition the court for a recount, which they did Tuesday or Wednesday. So I can't imagine it's going to take very long once the count.
I can't imagine. I mean, probably, days, couple of days.
Yeah. So
like Arizona.
I'm not going to take that. So December we'll know if anything changes.
Okay.
And then committee assignments will probably not be formal. I would not expect committee assignments to be announced until at the earliest the day they convene. That's sort of the other thing, the leadership of all the committees will be changing.
Oh, no, results. Yeah.
And recount, yes.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions for Ms. Tracy?
Yeah. So yeah, I intend to be talking with Jason about just being prepared for the big rollout of something. So there's a coalition of us, and it also makes sense to touch base with. Well, CVTA doesn't yet have an executive director, but Hampton Roads does. So talk to our sister organization.
Well, if nothing else, any questions? Walter, Supervisor Alter, any questions? Right. Well, then I will adjourn us, and we don't have closed session in this meeting. I'll adjourn us and we are adjourned. Actually, I'm going to ask you guys some stuff. So we gotta go.